With Final Destination Bloodlines officially out, I wanted to do a ranking of my favorite films in the Final Destination franchise from worst to best. Now, these are just my personal opinions, and ironically, I never saw the Final Destination films until pretty much a couple weeks before Bloodlines came out, so I kind of went through a marathon of watching all the Final Destination films until I got to see Bloodlines. So they're all fresh in my mind, and again, these are just my opinions, but here is the list from worst to best. Now, starting off this list was probably the most disappointing watch during the marathon that I did, and it is The Final Destination, which happens to be the fourth film in the franchise. This movie was specifically and pretty much made for 3D purposes. You could tell that while watching it on your phone or even if you're watching it at home. It kind of looks weird. It just looks really weird in comparison to the rest of the series. It also has, and no offense to the performances, probably the worst performances in the whole entire franchise. The kills and the premonitions are kind of mediocre in my personal opinion. The raceway kind of big spectacle wasn't really a spectacle in my personal opinion. The movie theater sequence was kind of cool, but yeah, otherwise this is a really bad movie and probably one of the worst sequels I've seen in a franchise in quite some time. That's just my personal opinion. But again, there's one moment in the film where one of the characters actually accepts the fact that they're going to die soon. And they actually said, like, they're going to live their life and just, go about their life knowing that the day that their life is going to end is coming soon. I thought that was very poignant. And if the film were kind of revolving around that kind of storyline and kind of revolving around people that were kind of more accepting fate by the end of the film, I think it would be a little bit more interesting. But again, this was really bad. And my worst experience while watching all the films during this marathon. All right, I know this might be a little bit of a hot take, but I think, in my personal opinion, Final Destination 2 is the second worst film in the franchise in total. Now, I know a lot of people love this film and have fond memories of this movie. When I was doing the marathon, I thought it was just a little bit passable. Not as good as the other films in the franchise, but certainly not as bad as The Final Destination, which I think is on a whole other level of mediocrity. This film has some interesting things going for it. I think that the truck scene with, the logs in the back, obviously that is super scarring for a lot of people. I think that I know tons of people till this date who will still not drive behind a truck with logs or anything in the back because this movie was so scarring to them. But yeah, outside of that, there's some kill sequences which are pretty interesting. The twist with being able to survive if you quote unquote die and then come back to life, I thought that was kind of interesting, but not really in the same tone as the rest of the film and also the rest of the series. And also, I thought that Ali Larter coming back from the original film and being almost like a Sarah Connor in Terminator 2 here, I thought that was pretty cool, but I was really disappointed how her character kind of ends up in the film at the end. Thought that she deserved a little bit better with a conclusion to her character. But yeah, this is just passable for me. I think it's not as good as the rest of the films in the franchise. And at number 3 and 4, I say it's more of a tie for the third place. It is Final Destination 5 and also Final Destination Bloodlines, the recently released film. Now, both of these movies are very fun. I think that Final Destination 5 is probably the most interesting sequel I've seen in a franchise in quite some time. Because again, if you've never seen it before, I don't want to give you the twist because it is so surprising. And for a first time watch, I knew people kept saying when you're watching this film, you're going to be surprised. You're going to be surprised. I'm like, okay, watching it, it was really entertaining. Out of all the deaths in the whole entire franchise, the one death that really made me wince and kind of look away from the screen was the gymnast death in Final Destination 5. That actually made me squirm. That was an effective death and it really, petrified me after watching the film. But yeah, the suspension bridge kind of sequence was really cool, very interesting as well. I think that the twist at the end of the film was so cool. And again, when you rewatch this film and look at certain things that are happening throughout the whole movie, you will understand why that twist is so much more effective. Final Destination Bloodlines, which is tied for third with Final Destination 5, is so fun, so entertaining. In my personal opinion, I think it's the most self-aware Final Destination film in the franchise so far. I thought that the twist with premonitions was really interesting too, how the main character was able to have a premonition of someone else's premonition, which was super cool in a sense. The kind of Easter eggs that were laid out throughout the whole movie was pretty cool too. Tony Todd gets a very beautiful and very meaningful send off, not just as a actor, but as a character as well. And yeah, just total fun. I thought the CGI was very distracting though. I felt like Final Destination 5 CGI was a lot better than Bloodlines, but yeah, in total, these two films are tied for third. And here are the top two films in the franchise. Final Destination 3 is my second favorite film in the franchise. I think from top to bottom, this is such a fun thrill ride. And ironically, it is a thrill ride because it starts off with the big spectacle of the roller coaster. And one big note, the sound design in this film is the best in the whole entire franchise because the sound design in the roller coaster sequence and also at the subway sequence at the end of the film, top notch and top level audio. Really incredible. Also, Final Destination 3 probably boasts the best performance in the whole entire franchise with Mary Elizabeth Winstead before she became a big star. She is the headliner here and she does a really good job. I think that her performance and her character is probably the best acted character out of the whole entire franchise. Again, it's a thrill ride. It is very fun. I wouldn't say as good as the number one film, but it is super solid. And it's no surprise because, again, the original director and the original writer return here after a little bit of absence from the second film with a very solid product here. And you probably guessed it, but here is the number one film that I think is the best in the whole entire Final Destination franchise. And at number one, in my personal opinion, and I think for a lot of people that love this franchise, Final Destination, the original that came out way back in 2000. So it's celebrating its 25th anniversary, and the franchise is celebrating its 25th anniversary as well, is the best film in this entire franchise because from top to bottom, this is a spectacular and well-made movie. It came from an X-Files script, and I think that, in my personal opinion, is one of the greatest horror movies of all time and one of the greatest starting films for a film franchise in general. That first 15 minutes or so, I went into this movie blindly. I just thought, I'm going to have fun while watching this. It's going to be just, whatever. But that first 15 minutes is solid filmmaking. It just starts off with great tension. And there's a lot of underlying tension here. And just slowly but surely building up the suspense, building up the characters, building up the epic, still to this day, epic plane crash sequence in the air. That sequence is still, even though CGI is a little bit dated now, is still so effective. When I watched this for the first time, I was like shocked because I thought that all the characters actually did die because I didn't know like the specifics of how these movies go about. But yeah, great performances. I thought that the dark mood of this movie was great too, and kind of similar to the original Saw because the Saw films kind of went in a different direction, but the original Saw was this kind of interesting mystery slash horror movie crime film. And Final Destination, even though it is a horror movie in general, the kills kind of happen a little bit later on in the film. It's more focused about survivor's guilt and how all the deaths that happened in the school are kind of like taking a toll on the survivors and how they're kind of moving about in their lives and how, their mental health is kind of getting a little bit affected by everything that's happening around them. I thought that that was a very interesting thing to focus on for a first film in a franchise. And again, yeah, the kills are pretty interesting here, and the ending sequence is pretty fun as well. But I think it's just the rest of the Final Destination films, I think, focus too much on the kills and not on the story and the kind of atmosphere as much as this film. And I think that that's why this movie worked a little bit better for me. But yeah, nothing beats the original sometimes, and that's true for this franchise as well because I think that Final Destination is the best film in the franchise. But yeah, hope you liked the ranking that I gave, and I hope you loved Bloodlines too. I still think it's very fun. You should watch it in theaters. And yeah, let me know in the comments below what your ranking is of the Final Destination franchise.